to my desktop. Let's go back into GIMP, which has since closed. And let's open that detexture. Okay, that's what it looks like so far after we've done our texture painting. And I didn't mean to do that. Crap. I don't even know how I did that. Reset, flip, and rotate, yeah. And I'm now going to open that UV export that we just created. You'll see what that looks like here. Copy all of this, and I'm just going to paste this on top. And I'm going to do a 2 new layer. It just makes it a layer. And this will give us an idea of where our boundaries are as far as color goes. Great. So I know that I want this to be sort of a generic, sort of grayish thing. That could be metal or plastic, who knows. I'm going to use the rectangle tool here. I press R, give it a bit of breathing room, select all of it, and let's pick a grayish color. Set this to 0 to 100 for RGB. I'm going to say 50, 50, and 50. That's 50% gray. And then I do a fill by pressing Command on Mac or Control in Windows and comma. That's fine. And now I want to give, even though that's a flat color, and that might work for you, I sometimes add some noise to it, some RGB noise. This is a filter. I turn off independent RGB, so that gives me sort of some grayscale noise, but obviously that's just a bit too distracting, so I'm going to turn the value down here. Just enough so that there's a bit of variance, but not very much. Okay, great. And this basically is our diffuse texture. So what? I'm going to hide this UV layer. Ah, for crap's sake. I actually did that fill and that stuff in the UV layer, so I'm going to paste that into the new layer here. And now I don't need this anymore, so I'm going to delete it. And this is probably fine to start with our diffuse texture. So I'm going to merge these layers under image, flatten image, so now this is all one object. So I don't know why GIMP does this, but show layer boundary is just annoying. I don't like the look of that. And from this, we're going to create the rest of our textures. So I'm going to save this to my desktop as Subway XCF. Fantastic. So let's create a new layer for our illumination map. Call it illumination. Fantastic. Now, we want with the illumination map, and there is a great guide on Steam that you can look up to tell you what these values mean, is we want the part that's, the front part, we want that to be illuminated at night. We want it to retain that yellow and green color, and we want the rest of it to not have that color. So I am going to do a lasso select. You notice that I'm on the illumination layer, not the Subway D layer. Just get as close to the outside here as I can without disturbing the rest of it. I'm sure this is probably going to be fine. And we create a selection around it, and we're going to fill this with the color that will generate the illumination. And in this case, it's going to be a 115, 115, 115, Control comma to fill. Then we press Control I or Command I if you're on a Mac, and we fill the rest of it with black. Now there's two different types of illumination maps, or two different, levels of illumination, I guess. Once you go over 128 for illumination, your background has to be 192 gray, and that will give you that sort of no color look that you might see in a house window or something like that at night. Anything below 128 will retain the color, but it's a little difficult to keep it to tell when it's going to turn on and off, but for most of these things, we just assume that the sign's going to remain on all the time, and it really isn't all that distracting if it is on during the day. But again, you can look up that guide, and that should give you a good idea of what it is. Okay, so I'm going to keep that selection. That's our illumination map. Let's make another layer here. This is going to be our specular map, how shiny it is. And this is a grayscale map that goes from 0 to 100. And it's not really a very finely tuned thing. Usually you won't notice a difference if the values are less. Between each level of specularity is less than 5. So I'm going to set the non-shiny metal parts here to, let's say, 35, 35, and 35. Fill it in, press Command-I to invert, and we're going to set this to, let's say, 60. And again, Control-J or Control-Comma to fill it in. That's our specular map done. And from here, the rest of it, they're just going to be flat maps, no big deal. So new layer, this is going to be our normal map. And for this, we want the flat normal color. And you can read about normal maps. There's a lot written on them. They're really cool things, actually, free detail. And the flat normal color is an RGB 0 to 255. It'd be 128, 128, and 255. So we just fill the entire thing with that. Next, we want a ACDINS, want a color map, and our color map, since our Subway logo is the colors that we want it, it's just going to be black because we don't want people changing the color of the logo. Again, Control-Comma rather, and our last layer is going to be our alpha layer. This controls transparency in the game, and this is going to be a solid white map. So we flip our background and foreground again, Control-Comma, and there it is. So I'm going to save this. So now let's start to export them. Turn off the visibility of these layers. Now with your diffuse texture, especially on props, you definitely want to tone down the saturation and the white point of your diffuse texture. This is going to be way too bright in game if we were just to bring it in like this. So what I'm going to do here is actually select the layer. I'll change that, or shut that down, and go up to Colors, Levels, and we grab this right here, the slider. This is our white point, and we're going to bring it down. It has to be pretty dark. This is probably fine right here. Great, so let's start exporting our textures. I'll call this Subway D and overwrite it. Yes, please do. Okay. And I press Command-Shift or Control-Shift-E to do the export here, and this is I for illumination. And then Command-Shift-E. This is our specular map. Fantastic. Oh, this is so great. Normal map, no detail. Just a flat normal map. It's a good idea to include every map, just to make sure that your asset works exactly as you want it. And actually, wait. Yeah, 512 by 128, that's fine. Color map, exported with a C. Alpha map, exported with an A. Okay, now since our object, we're not going to have to do too much to this to turn it into a level of detail or a LOD model. I'm actually going to retain the UVs from this and just downscale the image for our textures for the LOD model. So I'm going to go back into, just close this down, that doesn't need to be open. Go up to Image, Scale Image, and I think I can only go to maybe 128 by 32, anything under 32. I'm not sure if the game will accept that or not, so that's probably the size this is going to have to be. Scale it down and export that as Subway _LOD D for our diffuse. We export it. And we just repeat the steps here, only with the smaller images. You could probably clean this up a bit if you wanted to, but it's going to be fine. This is subway lot I. Specular. Okay, great, textures are done. All right, so now we're ready to create our meshes for the game. First thing, I'm just going to delete this. So when you actually export the 3D geometry that you're going to use in game, you absolutely have to triangulate it, otherwise you'll have problems with import. So to do that, you actually just go into edit mode with everything selected. And by the way, if I haven't said it, you press A to select everything, like absolutely everything in the object, and then press Command or actually it's just Control T on Mac and Windows, and that triangulates our mesher. Now we go up to File, Export FBX, which is what I'm going to be using. And our presets for export here, these aren't too difficult. We want to obviously export the selection. Make sure that you're in object mode when you go to export here. We want to export the selected object. We only want to export the mesh. We want to add this experimental apply transform, and it has been experimental for as long as I've been using Blender, but it seems to work every time. Otherwise, make sure that your transforms here, you've got negative Z forward and Y up. That's what works. You don't need to bake animation. We're not actually exporting any armatures, but still it's probably a good idea to turn off add leaf bones and smoothing, apply modifiers. This is probably a good thing to have on just in case you forget that you didn't actually apply your edge split. So great. This is going to be Subway FBX on my desktop. So now to create the level of detail model, we want to get it down under 100 tries. And I think with this, we don't actually need it to be, an extruded object, so you're not really going to notice it. So I'm going to delete all of these triangles here that make up the sides of it by pressing 3 and doing a box select. This is B, and then you box select it all. All right, so where are we at now? We're at 144. So, you know what? Good idea. I'm actually going to duplicate this object here. I'll call this main. That stupid dog next door. And this is going to be LOD. So once again, just to make sure that I've done this correctly, I'm going to export the main mesh again that we've set up. Oh, and just so you can see, there we go. See, we got that nice noisy sort of side on it. That's pretty much all we need. Once again, export FBX, Subway FBX. I have a preset set up, and then once you set up all this crap, if you press the plus button up here, you can save your presets, which is nice. Guess I didn't do that. Anyway, export FBX. Now we close down our main, open up our LOD, and once again, select it, go into edit mode, wireframe, grab all these back triangles here, just delete it. And still sort of within the boundaries of it. And now we do another decimate modifier just to pull it down even further so we get our try count down below 100.